Could a single face destroy decades of lies? The question struck Richard Hale the moment he looked up from his dinner table. It was a cold London evening, and the luxury restaurant glimmered under golden chandeliers. Waiters moved like shadows, serving the city's elite. Among them, a young black waitress moved gracefully, her expression calm yet distant. Her name tag read Evelyn. When she approached his table, Richard's heart froze. Her eyes, those same hazel green eyes, were identical to his daughter's. The same tilt, the same spark, the same quiet sadness he had seen only once before. He blinked hard, thinking it was his imagination, but when Evelyn smiled politely and said, "Good evening, sir," his glass nearly slipped from his hand. Marilyn noticed his reaction, her lips tightening. "Richard, what's wrong?" she asked, suspicion already blooming, but he said nothing, pretending to adjust his tie. Evelyn stepped back respectfully, unaware of the storm she had just awakened. As she walked away, Richard's gaze followed her, haunted by memories he had buried 26 years ago, memories of a woman he once loved, but left behind because society had judged her skin color. Meanwhile, Evelyn felt uneasy, sensing the man's eyes on her. She didn't know him, yet something about his face tugged at her soul, a strange familiarity she couldn't explain. The restaurant's chatter blurred as Mark, her manager, snapped, "Move faster, Evelyn. These people don't like waiting." She nodded quietly, swallowing the sting of his words. Across the room, Richard couldn't focus. Every movement Evelyn made tore open the truth he had tried to forget. Could it be possible? Could this woman be the child he never knew, the child born of love and silence? Marilyn leaned closer and whispered sharply, "Stop staring at that waitress, Richard. People are watching." But Richard couldn't stop. His world, built on success and secrets, had just cracked open in front of everyone. And as Evelyn returned with the next course, his trembling hand brushed hers accidentally. Their eyes met for a brief, electric second, and in that moment, something ancient and buried came alive. If you believe truth always finds its way back, drop a broken heart in the comments and subscribe for Chapter 2, where one dinner turns into a storm of revelations. Evelyn's heart was pounding. She couldn't explain why that man's gaze felt so heavy, so strangely familiar. She had seen hundreds of customers during her 3 years at the restaurant, but none had ever looked at her like that, with confusion, sorrow, and something else she couldn't name. When she stepped into the kitchen to grab the next tray, her hands trembled slightly. Mark noticed and barked, "Careful, Evelyn, don't spill that on Mr. Hale's table. He's one of the richest men in the country." Evelyn nodded quietly, unaware that the name Hale had just set fate into motion. Back in the dining area, Richard couldn't think straight. Every bite of his food tasted like regret. Marilyn's words blurred as he kept glancing toward the kitchen doors, waiting for Evelyn to reappear. He remembered the woman from decades ago, her laughter, her warmth, her dark skin glowing in the sunlight. Her name was Lena Parker. He had loved her once, but he hadn't loved her enough to fight the world's judgment. Now, as Evelyn returned with a new tray, he whispered her last name from the receipt tag pinned to her uniform, Parker. The sound nearly stole his breath. Could it be that Lena's child had survived? Could Evelyn Parker be his daughter? Marilyn caught his whisper and her face stiffened. "You know her?" she asked coldly. Richard hesitated, then lied, "No, just thought I recognized the name." But Marilyn's sharp instincts didn't believe him. She watched Evelyn with quiet suspicion, her mind already twisting stories of betrayal. Evelyn, meanwhile, set the plates down gently, trying to ignore the judgmental stares of nearby guests. She was used to it, used to being invisible until someone needed to blame her for a mistake. But this time, something felt different. When she turned, she found Richard still watching her, eyes filled with something softer than pity, almost like longing. She excused herself and rushed outside for a breath of air. The cold night wrapped around her, stars flickering above like distant witnesses. "Why did he look at me like that?" she whispered to herself. Inside, Richard excused himself from the table and stepped out to follow her. Marilyn's voice hissed behind him, "Richard, don't you dare cause a scene," but he ignored her. Out by the alley behind the restaurant, Evelyn stood alone, holding back tears she didn't understand. When Richard's voice came, low and hesitant, she turned sharply. "Miss Parker, do you know a woman named Lena Parker?" Evelyn blinked. "That was my mother's name," she said softly. "She passed away when I was 10. Why?" Richard's throat tightened, the world spinning around him. "Because I once knew her, a long time ago." Evelyn frowned, confused. "You knew my mother?" He nodded, eyes glistening. "She was very important to me." For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of city traffic filled the silence. Evelyn's confusion grew into suspicion. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked, stepping back slightly. Richard hesitated, then whispered, "Because you look like someone I lost. And maybe I was wrong to let her go." Before Evelyn could reply, Mark's voice shouted from the doorway, "Evelyn, what are you doing? Get back to work." She wiped her eyes quickly and turned away, leaving Richard alone under the streetlight, guilt crashing over him like a wave. Marilyn watched from the glass door, her face pale with realization. She now knew exactly what Richard was hiding, and she would do anything to bury it again. If you think truth can't stay hidden forever, comment truth and subscribe before Chapter 3, where the past finally breaks the surface. Richard couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Evelyn's face, Lena's face reborn. The curve of her smile, the spark in her eyes, even the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, it was all too familiar. He knew deep down it wasn't coincidence, it was consequence. The ghost of his past had found him. Marilyn noticed his silence at breakfast. Her diamond bracelet clinked against the porcelain cup as she set it down sharply. "You didn't say a word all morning," she said coldly. "Still thinking about that waitress?" Richard froze, his spoon hovering midair. "Marilyn, please, don't start." But her voice sharpened. "Don't lie to me, Richard. I saw how you looked at her. Who is she?" He sighed, defeated. "Her name is Evelyn Parker. She's Lena's daughter." The air left the room. Marilyn's lips trembled with disbelief, then hardened. "Lena Parker, that woman from before we married. The one who ruined your reputation in the press." Her voice dripped venom. "And now her daughter's serving food in the same city you built an empire in? How pathetic." Richard leaned forward, pain flickering in his eyes. "It's not her fault, Marilyn. She doesn't even know who I am." But Marilyn stood abruptly, fury shaking her hands. "And she never will. Do you hear me? You've worked too hard to let one mistake destroy everything." She stormed out, heels echoing like thunder across marble floors. Richard dropped his head in his hands. For the first time in years, he felt helpless. Back at the restaurant, Evelyn tried to focus, but her mind kept replaying the strange conversation in the alley. Richard Hale, the billionaire everyone admired. Her mother's old employer, perhaps. She couldn't be sure. She went to the small break room and opened an old box she kept in her locker. Inside were a few photographs, one of her mother smiling in front of a mansion she once worked in. Behind her stood a man, blurred but familiar. Evelyn squinted at the image. Her heart skipped. The man looked like Richard Hale. Could it be? She pressed the photo against her chest, tears stinging her eyes. Was he my mother's old boss? Or something more? That evening, Richard returned to the restaurant. He asked to speak to the manager. Mark Benson rushed forward, eager to impress. "Mr. Hale, sir, how can I help you?" Richard's voice was steady but heavy. "I'd like to speak with Evelyn Parker." Privately, Mark frowned. "She's busy with orders, sir." "Perhaps I can now," Richard interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. Mark hesitated, then called Evelyn from the kitchen. As she stepped out, apron still on, she froze at the sight of him. "Mr. Hale?" she whispered. He nodded. "Evelyn, I need to talk to you. It's important." Mark rolled his eyes and walked away, muttering under his breath about special treatment. Richard led Evelyn to a quiet corner booth. He took a deep breath. "I don't know how to say this, but I believe I knew your mother a long time ago." Evelyn blinked, unsure what to say. "You said that before," she murmured. "But what did she mean to you?" Richard's eyes softened. "Everything." His voice cracked. "She meant everything to me." Evelyn stared at him, her pulse racing. "Then why did she raise me alone?" Richard looked down, guilt clouding his face. "Because I was weak. Because I cared too much about what the world thought. I left her when she needed me most." Tears filled Evelyn's eyes as she whispered, "So you're saying, you're my father?" Before Richard could answer, a voice interrupted. Marilyn stood near the entrance, her expression cold and furious. Enough of this nonsense, she shouted. The restaurant fell silent. Richard, you're humiliating yourself and this family. She is not your daughter. She's a girl looking for attention. Evelyn stood trembling, her eyes wide. I never asked for anything, she said softly. I just wanted the truth. Marilyn glared. The truth? The truth is you don't belong here. Evelyn bit her lip, pain flashing across her face. But before she could speak, Richard stood. Don't talk to her like that, Marilyn. The entire restaurant gasped. You've lived your life hiding behind status and fear. But I won't let you erase my past anymore. Marilyn's face burned with shame as whispers filled the room. Evelyn stepped back, tears rolling down her cheeks. Richard turned to her, his voice trembling. Evelyn, I don't deserve forgiveness. But if you can give me a chance to know you, I'd be grateful for the rest of my life. Evelyn looked at him, torn between anger and yearning. She whispered, I need time. Then she turned and walked away, leaving Richard standing under the restaurant lights as Marilyn broke down, her perfect world cracking apart. Outside, Evelyn looked up at the night sky. The stars seemed closer now, like her mother was watching. Maybe truth always found its way through lies. Maybe love did too. If you believe truth always wins over fear, comment justice and subscribe before Chapter 4, where blood, truth, and redemption collide. The next morning, Evelyn woke up with swollen eyes and a heart full of questions. She kept replaying Richard's words in her mind. I was weak. Those 3 words cut deeper than any insult she'd ever heard. They carried regret, guilt, and something else, love. She sat by her window, watching sunlight spill over the quiet streets. For years, she wondered why her mother avoided questions about her father. Now the truth was half open like a wound that wouldn't close. She had a name, a face, a billionaire who called himself her father. Meanwhile, Richard Hale sat in his glass-walled office high above the city. His reflections stared back at him, a man who had everything except peace. The night before had been a storm he couldn't stop. Marilyn hadn't spoken a word to him since. Reporters were already sniffing around after a guest at the restaurant leaked the confrontation. But Richard didn't care anymore. For the first time in decades, he didn't care about image or headlines. He cared about Evelyn. He called his assistant. Get Evelyn Parker's address. I need to see her. Evelyn was just starting her shift when Richard arrived at the restaurant again. The air went still the moment he walked in. Mark Benson's face turned pale. He rushed to the door, fake smile plastered on. Mr. Hale, sir, we weren't expecting you today. Richard's tone was calm but firm. I'm not here for you, Mark. I'm here for Evelyn. Mark hesitated, glancing at the watching customers. Sir, with all due respect, last night caused enough trouble. You've caused enough, Richard interrupted sharply. The way you treat your staff says more about you than your title ever will. Evelyn stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. It's okay, Mark, she said softly. I'll talk to him. Richard's eyes softened as she approached. The restaurant went silent again, everyone pretending not to stare. Evelyn, he said gently, I know last night was chaos. I shouldn't have let it happen that way. She looked up, pain flickering in her eyes. You said my mother meant everything to you. Then why didn't you stay? Why didn't you come back? Richard swallowed hard. Because I was a coward. Because I thought love would ruin me in a world that judged everything by color and class. But it was me who ruined everything, not your mother. Evelyn crossed her arms, tears welling. You think words can fix that? You left her to raise me alone. She died working double shifts. She never stopped believing you'd come back. But you didn't. Richard's voice trembled. And I'll live with that shame forever. But please, Evelyn, don't let my sins define who you are. You're stronger than I ever was. As the room listened, Marilyn appeared at the door, her expression unreadable. Slowly she walked forward. Her voice was softer than before. Evelyn, she said, I came to say something too. Evelyn turned warily. What could you possibly say? Marilyn took a breath. I was wrong. I judged you before I knew anything about you. I saw a threat when I should have seen a human being. Her eyes glistened. I don't expect forgiveness, but Richard's right. You deserve the truth, not silence. Evelyn looked between them, the couple standing like 2 ghosts from a story she never asked to be part of. Her voice cracked as she said, all I wanted was honesty, not pity. Richard stepped closer. Then take honesty. You are my daughter. I'll take any punishment the world gives me, but I'll never deny it again. A gasp spread through the restaurant. Cameras flashed as someone filmed from a nearby table, but Richard didn't flinch. His voice rose, clear and steady. I hid the truth for years. Today I won't hide anymore. Evelyn's tears finally broke free. She covered her face, shaking with emotion. You don't know how many nights I wished someone would say that, she whispered. Richard hesitated, then reached out his hand. Then let me start today, not as a billionaire. Not as a man seeking forgiveness, but as a father. Evelyn looked at his hand, trembling, uncertain, real. Slowly she placed hers in his. The restaurant erupted into murmurs, some shocked, some smiling. Marilyn turned away, her eyes wet but peaceful. Outside, reporters gathered like vultures, but when Richard walked out beside Evelyn, he didn't hide. He faced the cameras proudly. Yes, he said to the flashing lights, she's my daughter. And she's the best thing I've ever done right. Evelyn looked at him, a small smile forming. For the first time, the ache in her heart felt lighter. The truth had cost them everything, reputation, peace, comfort, but it gave them something priceless. Closure. That night, Evelyn visited her mother's grave. She knelt, whispering, he finally said it, Mama. He finally told the world who I am. A soft breeze swept across the cemetery, and for a moment, it felt like her mother's hand on her shoulder. The lesson was simple yet eternal. Truth may hurt, but lies destroy. Only honesty has the power to heal generations. If you believe truth always wins, comment "Truth Prevails" and subscribe for more stories that touch the heart and challenge the world.